Okay, Marco, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the regular council meeting for November 26, 2024. I'd like to remind members of the public in the gallery during the council meeting to adhere to the conduct set forth in the council procedural bylaw and displayed near the entrance of council chambers. I'll call the regular council meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Starting with Treaty 6 acknowledgement. Blackfalds Town Council acknowledges that we are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. Oh, that sounds better. Thank you. Has council had a chance to review the agenda for tonight? Administration, we have one other item, I understand.
We have two additions. The first one is should be item 611 under business, Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership Grant. And we have an addition under 8.1, confidential code of conduct, VoIP section 24.1, advice from officials.
Thank you. Does council or administration wish, council wish to exempt any item from the proposed consent agenda before the adoption of the regular agenda? Seeing no exemptions, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the regular agenda for November 26th as amended. Councillor Schwab.
I'll adopt the regular agenda for November 26th as amended.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is adopted unanimously. Moving on, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda for November 26th as presented. Deputy Mayor Sands.
I'll move to accept the consent agenda for November 26, 2024 as presented.
Notice of this public hearing was advertised in accordance with Section 606 of the Municipal Government Act, the Town of Blackfalds Public Notification Bylaw, and Public Participation Policy. A complete advertising listing is included in the public hearing report before you. The written submissions and comments received to date are also included in the public hearing report before you.
Thank you. Are there any late written submissions relating to the bylaw?
There are not.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the Planning and Development Department?
There are none.
Thank you. Is there anyone who supports the bylaw and wishes to speak? Good evening.
I would just like to thank this council for righting a wrong. A friend of mine in 2009, in the excitement of purchasing their house in Rolling Hills Estates, was a victim of having to jackhammer up a driveway that their builder had installed for them because a neighbor to them had asked to do the same, and the town made them at their expense jackhammer up this bylaw. So I would just like to thank this council, probably one of the best that we've had at listening to the public and writing this, and I hope moving forward we do some of the same, the bad decisions that have come forward. I'm very much in support of this. I think a lot of people are, and credit to you for listening. And unfortunately, my friend left town. So again, I appreciate that you've righted this for some people. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who opposes the bylaw and wishes to speak? Is there anyone deemed to be affected by the bylaw and wishes to speak? Are there any further comments from the Planning and Development Department?
No, Mayor Hoover.
Do councillors have any comments or questions? If nothing further, I hereby declare the public hearing related to bylaw 1315.24 to be closed at 7:06. We have no delegations this evening. Moving into business items. Item 6.1, request for decision on bylaw 1315.24, front parking pads amendment, second and third reading.
Thank you, Mayor Hoover, members of council. Last summer, a delegation spoke to their desire to have a front parking pad on their front yard in absence of a garage, which is known as a front parking pad. This matter was brought forward to a series of council and standing committee of council meetings, which ultimately resulted in administration being directed to draft regulations that would allow for front parking pads in residential districts and enable landowners to apply to vary the regulations where reasonable. The draft regulations were the subject of an open house held in June of this year, with the results of the public engagement shared at the September 24th, 2024 council meeting, indicating the majority of those who participated were in favor of allowing front parking pads in town. Council gave first reading to bylaw 131524, which proposes to amend the land use bylaw to allow front parking pads and bring in associated development regulations at the October 22nd, 2024 regular council meeting. Now that the public hearing has been closed, administration is now bringing the amending bylaw forward for consideration of second and third reading. Bylaw 131524 proposes to allow front parking pads in all single-dwelling land use districts and the R2 districts, with the exception of multiple housing and mixed-use developments, because those are uses that are comprehensively planned with their own associated parking lots. The other residential land use districts are excluded from being allowed to have front parking pads as a use for the same reason as the multiple housing and mixed-use developments have been excluded, because they too accommodate developments with comprehensively planned parking in mind. Bylaw 131224 includes all draft development regulations for front parking pads previously shared with council, along with additional amendments that were required through the land use bylaw to ensure the amendments were made in a cohesive manner to avoid conflicting standards. The attached bylaw, I'm going to refer to the bylaw numbers and just explain the changes that are proposed under them. So bylaw amendment number 2.8 presents a new section in the land use bylaw specific to front parking pads and requires that front parking pads have a minimum length of 6 meters or 19.69 feet, which will accommodate an average size vehicle to ensure that it can be fully accommodated on the pad without encroaching on a sidewalk or road. A minimum width is proposed of 3 meters or 9.84 feet to a maximum width of 7 meters or 22.94 feet to ensure that the width is sufficient to accommodate an average size vehicle, and the maximum width will assist in preventing a significant amount of a front yard from being turned into a front parking pad. Front parking pads must abut a sidewalk or road where there is no sidewalk, an amendment that was suggested during the public engagement process. To ensure that movement of traffic is both safe and efficient, the Development Authority will not allow front parking pads onto highways or arterial roads or any other location that would be liable to create a hazardous traffic situation. A new proposed requirement that front parking pads must be located as far as possible from the intersection of a road or lane. This requirement came out of an internal review of the bylaw that was done prior to taking this forward for first reading. And the minimum 25% landscaping requirement of a front yard must be maintained, and that variance to the landscaping minimum is only considered where alternative access isn't available. It's important to note for council's information that the R2 district does not have a prescribed minimum front yard landscaping requirement like the other districts. There are several challenges with this R2 district that will necessitate amendments in the future. With those amendments, when those amendments come forward, administration intends on introducing a minimum 25% front landscaping requirement in the district. In the meantime, administration will require this 25% minimum landscaping requirement where front parking pads are being applied for in the R2 district. Other amendments that are contemplated under bylaw 131524 outside of the specific new section for front parking pads are Amendment 2.1, which proposes to update the definition of driveways to clarify the distinction between a parking pad and a front parking pad. Amendment 2.2 proposes to introduce the definition of a front parking pad, which is essentially what was previously presented to council and the public, with one small amendment, the addition to the driveway reference to explicitly identify them as different developments. Amendment 2.3 adds front parking pads to be shown on landscaping plans. Amendment 2.4 is adding front parking pads to the list of exempted areas, which will allow RVs to be parked year-round, which is the same requirement that currently applies to driveways. Amendment 2.5 proposes to allow for tandem parking on front parking pads when they're associated with row housing, a permitted use in the R2 district. This is the same rule that currently applies to driveways. Amendment 2.6 proposes to update the sightline requirements to include front parking pads. Administration has taken an opportunity with this amendment to fix an existing typo where the land use bylaw states land in this subsection, it should state lane. Amendment 2.9, this amendment proposes to clearly state that RV parking is allowed on front parking pads. This is the same rule that currently applies to driveways. Amendment 2.10 is adding front parking pads as a location where temporary shipping containers for the sole purpose of using it as a moving storage pad for no more than 14 days may be placed, which is again consistent with the rules for driveways. And amendments 2.11 to 2.14 are amendments to the residential land use districts where front parking pads are proposed to be located to ensure that the prescribed maximum parcel coverage calculation excludes front parking pads, again consistent with the way we treat driveways. The administrative recommendation before council is that council firstly give second reading to bylaw 131524 front parking pads amendments as presented, and second that council give third reading to bylaw 131524 front parking pad amendments as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Just one thing I noted that this would exclude arterial roads. That doesn't, just so I'm clear, that doesn't include collector roads? Is that, or are they defined the same way?
It would be arterial roads as defined in our transportation master plan. So collector roads are treated different than arterial roads.
And just so I understand it, is it easy to summarize? Are you able to summarize which roads would be considered arterial roads in Blackfalds? Or?
I'll let Director Warren correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Broadway would be considered an arterial road, as would Womax.
Yeah, Your Worship Council, I believe it's Broadway as well as portions of South Street. I believe those are the only two arterial roadways. Oh, and then a little piece of Vista.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there are potentially properties that are exempt from or are unable to add the front parking pad.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else for questions? Seeing none, we do have the readings. Councillor Coulter first.
I'm ready to move that council give second reading to bylaw 1315.24 front parking pad amendments as presented.
Thank you. Any debate or discussion on the motion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. Deputy Mayor Sands.
I'm prepared to move that council give third reading to bylaw 1315.24 front parking pad amendments as presented.
Thank you. Debate, discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6.2, request for decision on subdivision file number S-04-24, the Blackfalds Crossing Trail.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Hoover. The subdivision application before council proposes to subdivide a 26-meter wide strip of land between the eastern boundary of the developed portion of the Blackfalds Crossing commercial area and the Highway 2A corridor to include an existing trail and a portion of the North Red Deer River Water Services Commission utility right-of-way. If approved, the subdivision would designate the newly created parcel as municipal reserve and transfer ownership to the town of Blackfalds. Section 654 sub 1 of the Municipal Government Act, Section 9 of the Matters Related to Subdivision Development Regulation, and Policy 3.12 of the town's municipal development plan all contain considerations the subdivision authority must take into account when making decisions on subdivision applications. Administration is satisfied that the application satisfactorily meets the required criteria. An analysis of each of these considerations is provided in the report before council. Notification of this subdivision was sent to adjacent landowners and all local authorities and agencies as required by provincial legislation. Lacombe County advised they have no comments or concerns. Fortis stated they do not require any easements to be registered. Alberta Health Services advised they are satisfied the proposed subdivision poses minimal risk to public health. AGCO Transmission stated they have no objections, subject to conditions which this subdivision will adhere to. TELUS previously stated that they will require a TELUS utility right-of-way. We've since been in contact with TELUS and just explained to them the intention of this subdivision, and they have since waived that requirement. That is not provided in your package because we received that after this report was submitted for council inclusion. The town's municipal engineer noted that the subdivision plan doesn't fully encompass the utility right-of-way that it was originally intended to do so. There's a small portion of the utility right-of-way on the north end of the plan area that veers slightly to the west that wasn't included. There is a condition of subdivision approval that is proposed to address this. And we did receive 3 additional responses after the report was submitted for agenda inclusion outside of that TELUS confirmation. And sorry, there's 4. Rogers and the North Red Deer Regional Wastewater Services Commission stated they have no concerns. The North Red Deer Water Services Commission, whose utility right-of-way this will include, did advise that the encroachment agreement that we previously established between the town and the commission will remain instated. And Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors advised that although the proposed subdivision does not meet Section 18 of the matters related to subdivision development regulation, the department does grant approval for the town's subdivision authority to allow the subdivision to continue as is. With respect to financial implications, Parks and Facilities area already maintains this trail, and this subdivision is just bringing ownership of the lands into the town and designates that new created parcel as municipal reserve on the certificate of land title. So there are no financial implications on bringing this onto the town's land inventory. The administrative recommendation is that council consider the following motion: that council, being the designated subdivision authority for the town of Blackfalds, is satisfied that the proposed subdivision meets the relevant considerations and move to approve the subdivision of lots 1 and 2, Block 4, Plan 1822757, part of the Northeast 223927 west of the 4th Meridian, subject to the following conditions: that the plan of subdivision be updated to fully encompass the North Red Deer River Water Services Commission utility right-of-way. It's a mouthful. That pursuant to Section 84 of the Land Titles Act, the subdivision as amended pursuant to condition of subdivision approval number 1 is registered by plan of survey. And 3, that pursuant to Section 654 sub 1 sub D of the Municipal Government Act, that all outstanding property taxes are paid or other satisfactory arrangements are made with the town. And lastly, that pursuant to Section 655 sub 1 of the Municipal Government Act, that the owner/developer register utility easement right-of-way as per the requirements of the town of Blackfalds and our utility companies, concurrent with or prior to the registration of the plan of survey. Thank you.
Questions or comments? And just so I heard you mentioned that you did receive response from TELUS, and just wanted to confirm that they are maintaining their requirement that right away is required to be.
No, they've since, once we explained that there's not going to be any further development on the subdivided parcel, and the intent is just to keep it as is. It's just a matter of transferring that ownership to the town. They said that utility right-of-way isn't required. We kept 4 on here. Council can amend it if they want, but the condition has kind of already been fulfilled with that confirmation through TELUS. So it's up to council whether you would like to amend the conditions of approval before you to remove number 4, or you can keep it on.
And what would be the consequence to having it remain in place?
Nothing. It's fulfilled.
Okay. All right. So I would imagine if somebody wants to read this and they happen to not include the 4th, just for brevity, it's not going to have an issue?
No,
okay.
It won't.
So we do have the administrative recommendations that include either 3 or 4 exemptions. Whoever decides they're moving that. Councillor Schwab.
I always do these long ones. I move that council, being the designated subdivision authority of the town of Blackfalds, is satisfied that the proposed subdivision meets the relevant considerations, and move to approve the subdivision of lots 1 and 2, Block 4, Plan 182-2757, Part Northeast 22-39-27, West 4th of the meridian, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the plan of subdivision shall be updated to fully encompass the North Red Deer River Water Service Commission utility right-of-way. Number 2, that pursuant to Section 84 of the Land Titles Act, the subdivision, as amended pursuant to condition of subdivision approval 1, is registered by plan of survey. And number 3, that pursuant to Section 6541D of the Municipal Government Act, all outstanding property taxes are to be paid, or some other arrangement satisfactory to the town of Blackfalds for payment thereof be made.
Thank you. Debate or discussion on that motion? Call the question. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.3, request for decision on bylaw 1318.24, Schedule C, Community Services Facility Fee, Schedule first and second reading. Director Karkowicz.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So we discussed the recreation rates at our Recreation and Culture Board meetings in the last couple of months. The proposed changes before you are shown in red. So what we've done is we removed the minor baseball / soccer player fee, which was, I believe, $11 per person. And we've now changed it to charging the local nonprofit rate for those associations for their use. And we've reduced that rate slightly to $9 for the nonprofit organizations, which we also changed the rates for our local and non-local rates as well for the ball diamonds and soccer fields. We've also made a change to the definition for what a nonprofit organization is, and we added in 80% of participants must reside in Blackfalds or Lacombe County. And that's just to ensure that the users are taxpayers or supporters of our facilities through the Lacombe County contributions. And then we also made a change to the non-alcohol event damage deposit from $100 to $300. So those are the proposed changes that we have. And we have our motions there for first and second reading. If you have any questions.
I see none. Excuse me. Councillor Pell.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, I move the council give first reading to bylaw 1318.24, Schedule C, the Community Service Facilities Fee Schedule as presented.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Councillor Coulter.
I'll do the second reading. The council gives second reading to bylaws 1318.24, Schedule C, Community Service Facility Fee Schedule as presented.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.4, request for decision on bylaw 1319.24, the Affordable Housing Taxation Bylaw, first reading.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you do have bylaw 1319.24, which is the Affordable Housing Taxation Bylaw. Bill 20 of the Municipal Affairs Statute Amendment Act was passed in May 2024 and received proclamation in October this year. One of the many changes that were brought about from this legislation is the full exemption of non-profit subsidised affordable housing from property taxation starting in the 2025 taxation year. At the November 12th meeting, regular council meeting, council made the following resolution that council directs administration to bring forward a bylaw to reinstate the municipal portion of the property tax on affordable housing units within Blackfalds. As mentioned previously on the 12th, the 20 units have an average property tax of just over $2,700 or $55,000 total. The province has still made the Alberta school education portion still exempt, and the recommendation that we put forward tonight that the council gives first reading to bylaw 1319.24, the affordable housing taxation bylaw. Any questions?
Excuse me, the only thing that I observed that I think is an error that we should look at is line 3.2 under the levy of property taxation. I mean, we'll have to check the Seniors Housing Act, but I do not believe that affordable housing has any connection to the seniors housing requisition. I know that from the foundation's perspective, those funds are separate.
Yeah, definitely the funds are separate, but I think they're still subject to requisition, just like a
Okay.
normal property within Blackfalds. There's separate pools of money, but I'll double check the tax roll. But under the financial implications, the tax roll has listed $18 for the Lacombe Foundation. So that will still apply to these housing units. It's only the education taxes that the province is.
Okay, just,
So,
I guess
I'll double check, yeah.
before second and third reading, just want to confirm that, but
For sure.
that's my understanding that requisitions are not applicable to affordable housing, but
Okay, I'll double check.
it may not apply necessarily in this case. Thank you. Excuse me. Councillor Pell.
I was just going to say, knowing that we have to give it first reading before we can make any changes, I'm prepared to give it first reading. Move that council give first reading to bylaw 1319.24 affordable housing taxation bylaw as presented.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.5, request for decision on council policy CP 187.24, the member at large recognition policy.
Sorry, we're not getting anything on here. So. Oh, thanks, Rick.
Alternates, thank you.
As part of the council committee audit, it was recommended that a formal policy be drafted outlining how recognition would be provided to members at large who are appointed to council committees. Last week's standing committee, council did review the member at large recognition policy, which factors in just putting into policy what we currently have been doing with the provision of a piece of an article of Blackfalds corporate apparel to any new members that are appointed to committees, and to also include a meal as part of a Christmas meal at that last meeting. So these are things that have been happening in some form or another, but just has not been included in policy. So this policy seeks to address that. So I'm looking for council recommendation is that council formally adopt council policy CP 18724, member at large recognition, effective immediately.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Just so I'm clear, that meal is in addition to the volunteer appreciation event
Correct.
that
They're
we hold every
also
year?
invited to that.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sands.
Thank you. I think it's great, this policy. So if nobody has anything else, I'm prepared to move that council formally adopt council policy CP 187.24, member at large recognition, effective immediately.
Thank you. Yes, I'm in support of this. I think the staff and the volunteer recognition has been a great addition this year. So thank you for that. Any debate or discussion? I call the question. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. And item 6.6, request for decision on the effect of Bill 20 changes to Local Authorities Election Act.
Bill 20, which came into force on October 31st, resulted in some significant changes to the Local Authorities Election Act, which is the governing legislation that municipalities in Alberta must follow in relation to general municipal elections. The most significant and noted change resulted in the removal of voting tabulators for the 2025 general municipal election and the requirement for municipalities to use a permanent voters list provided by Elections Alberta. Other noted changes are listed below. One is to allow municipalities to require criminal record checks to be submitted with a candidate's nomination package. The campaign period for the general election has changed, which means the period starts in January 1st of the year immediately following the election and ending on December 31st, immediately following the next general election. For the upcoming 2025 election, the campaign period starts on October 31st, 2025, and ends on December 31st, 2025. Intended and nominated candidates must give notice to the town of Blackfalds before accepting contributions or incurring any campaign expenses. Donations may be received outside of the local election year and will require annual reporting. There's some expanded use for special ballots and limits vouching about abilities. And there have been also some rules for the scrutineers. Administration is still working through these changes and will be updating the applicable election materials to reflect these changes, and a report will be coming forward in December with additional information. The one item that administration is seeking council direction on through this report is whether or not the town of Blackfalds should require criminal record checks to be submitted with a candidate's nomination package. If the decision is to require, it must be done through bylaw by December 31st. Administration has been monitoring how other municipalities are managing this, and while there have been a number that will be implementing this new provision, there are many more that have chosen not to. The main reasons for this are Section 174 of the MGA outlines that a councillor may be disqualified if they are convicted of an offence punishable by imprisonment for 5 or more years, or under Section 123, 124, or 125 of the Criminal Code of Canada. The Local Authorities Election Act requires nominations to include a written acceptance, sworn or affirmed that the individual is eligible to be elected to office. Bill 20 also requires a municipality that has included the requirement for a criminal record check to be submitted with the nomination forms to not withhold or redact the criminal record check provided by the candidate, with the exception of their mailing address. This actually appears to be in contravention to the FOIP Act. And then the final one is criminal record checks are only as good as the date they are received. Administration does not see any relative value in including the requirement of a criminal record check with a nomination package, considering the above factors. However, if it is the wish of council, administration will proceed with the drafting of a bylaw that requires a candidate to provide a criminal record check with their nomination package. There are no financial implications, and the administrative recommendation is that council consider the following: that council provide direction to administration on whether or not to draft a bylaw to require criminal record checks to be included with a candidate's nomination package for municipal general elections. So open to any questions of council.
Councillor Pell.
Thank you. Through the chair to CAO Isaac. Just in the background on the second bullet point when you were reading, it said for the upcoming 2025 election, the campaign period starts on October 31st, 2025.
Should have been 2024.
Well, but I'm guessing it should probably be January 1st because they can't start before January 1st. So it would be January 1st. And then I wasn't sure. I thought, oh, maybe campaign period, they meant nominations period. So I checked that on the website, but that closes nominations can be accepted January 1st to September 22nd.
The act does indicate January 31st of following the end of the election. So it would be January 31st until December 31st after the following election. So essentially 4 years, which I found really interesting.
Yeah.
people can campaign for the entire.
But the
term.
date of October 31st, 2025 didn't make any sense there, or at least I was confused.
There's a fact sheet. to
Okay.
be- Anyway, okay, so we'll get clarification on that, but I know we had a fact sheet that was specific. Danielle, do you have that somewhere?
It's in here.
Yes. I don't think it was in there for campaign period.
I've got the act open here.
Mhm. We can follow up on that. Are there any other questions? And we can.
Oh, yes, sorry, I do. So I would be in favor of directing administration to draft a bylaw requiring the criminal record checks, as we in Blackfalds require criminal record checks and the vulnerable sector checks for those who volunteer in our community. I believe it should be a requirement to run in the election, even though it does state clearly that they have to check a box and sign that they're in compliance with all these items. It doesn't hurt us to have the copy of the criminal record check. And while it is only good as of the day it's received, I would hope that if someone's campaigning and nominating for an election and then commits an offense that would require 5 years in prison, we would find out about it. So therefore, I would be highly, highly in favor of requiring the criminal record check. Thank you.
Councillor Schwab.
I agree with Councillor Pell. I really had to think about this today. Criminal record checks, I had to Google it to see if a vulnerable record check was in part of it, and it's not. So I think that if we're including a criminal record check, we should also be including the vulnerable record check as well as a child intervention check, because we are going into schools, we're going into the public where there's children, and we need to be safeguarding our kids in our community. And I feel that's not enough. A criminal record check doesn't give us enough information on these people. And we do a criminal record check when we're volunteering twice within our council term. So if they do put in one in January 1st of 2025, they'll get another one 2 years later. So if they're voted in, yes. But I feel like we're not doing enough for our community just by having a criminal record check.
If I can respond, I'm not sure if we can certainly do the criminal record check. I don't know if it'll provide us the beyond that. Danielle, do you have any information on that from?
If I may, the workshop I attended, we tried to get a definition of what a criminal record check was, because it wasn't included as a definition in Bill 20, and there was no real definition.
Deputy Mayor Sands.
Thanks. I'm in favor of it also. I was surprised when I ran in the election that I wasn't asked for a criminal record check, not until I offered up my time for volunteering with the kids and that type of thing. So I was very surprised. Of course, it may be a little different than our friends down south, but the thing is like Councillor Schwab said, when we're dealing with kids, we're going into the schools, even our seniors, we have to take the time to make sure we're safeguarding them as well. So I would be, and I don't know what it would take to find out if we could get that put in as far as the criminal record check. I think it'd be worth looking into for sure.
Yeah, we can follow up with municipal affairs.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I would be 100% in favor. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Well, good. I'm glad you put that up because that's actually going to help answer one of the comments that I have. I'll let you finish.
Yeah. So I think they're two separate, right, Ken? They're two separate, wouldn't they? The vulnerable sector check is different
They are,
from the criminal. So I don't believe,
Yeah.
yeah, we'd be able to do the vulnerable sector, but I can confirm.
Councillor Pell?
Thank you. So through the chair to CAO, Isaac, it might be worth adding into our nomination booklets that a vulnerable sector check would be required when they go to volunteer with the community, and just give them that heads up, even if,
Yeah,
you know,
we
if we
could do
can't
that.
request it beforehand, but just let them know that it will be required if they plan on volunteering anywhere in the town.
Okay.
Now, my comment on this, you know, to be honest, when I was first elected, I mean, we all did the criminal record check with the vulnerable sector report. And I just assumed that was normal, that was done. I was actually surprised when and I have no problem. I've submitted them. But a couple of questions or concerns that I would say here is one, I had to do one this year, and for a completely unknown reason, I had to get fingerprints. And it takes between 3 and 4 months to get the results back for that. So my concern would be somebody that is not aware and they do not tell you in advance that you need that would be a great candidate and has no reason that, and ultimately they could have nothing on their criminal record check, but for some reason they're required to get prints. And how it was explained to me is that somebody in Canada has the same birth date or a similar name, and that puts it in their system and it never goes away, and that person has to get prints, and it can take a significant amount of time, and it may be discriminating against somebody in that case. And my other question would be, to what end? If we already have a definition that disqualifies somebody from being an elected official or on council, if they do have something on their criminal record check that, say, an impaired driving or something that happened years ago that is not relevant to the job, now that's becoming information in the public domain. And I wonder, if we are going to require somebody to provide that, what is the purpose of doing that? And is that reasonable to require somebody that has no other reason to prevent them from being on council to now be exposed to humiliation and discrimination from people that don't really care about, you know, the disqualification requirements, but they might discriminate against that someone for having something on there. And so, I mean, again, I have no problem personally providing it. I've done it on a regular basis, and I think I would highly support if we had a policy or something from the town's perspective that once elected, that's something that's required. We don't want that person volunteering and being out in the community if they have a criminal record. But again, what is the length that we can go to if they do? And it doesn't qualify or doesn't disqualify them. That's my only concern in this. And I can see why other municipalities are steering away from this, because it does open a can of worms that's challenging. I think once someone's elected, potentially. Now, again, those are my concerns. Otherwise, you know, from my perspective, I'm happy to provide that. I just wonder about those circumstances that somebody might not be able to, be able to run because they aren't able to get that in advance because they have to get prints. And
Yeah,
what if they do have
that's-
something? Those are my concerns and questions, and I think we'd like to
Yeah.
answer those first.
That's something that, we'd have to look into. It's a good point. I wasn't aware of a situation like that. As far as to the extent, I think that was some of the conversation that we're hearing from other municipalities, exactly what you're saying. We may be maybe a deterrent for somebody that may have had something on their record that really doesn't have any maybe applicability to running for council, and then now all of a sudden you're losing a potentially good candidate. So I can't really answer a lot of those questions because I don't think that it really wasn't made very clear through Bill 20 to what extent, we could apply that if there is, other than We know that you would be disqualified if you were, you couldn't run for office, I guess, right? Because you wouldn't be eligible under the criteria.
Councillor
So-
Pell?
Thank you. With that though, through the chair to CAO Isaac, there's no, so although they wouldn't be eligible technically, and it is an offense punishable by imprisonment for 5 or more years. So I think your run-of-the-mill DUI, as far as I know, would not put someone in prison
No,
for that
no.
long. Yeah, however, so sorry, even though they wouldn't be eligible, there's no one checking that. There would be no checks on that. And then also, I don't recall our nomination packages, like the information we provide on the nomination packages, as being public information, unless I'm wrong.
I think you just noted though that we can't be, that what violates FOIP is that you can't exclude the
No,
information,
so
correct?
basically these criminal record checks, they have to be available to the public if anybody were to ask for them. And the only thing that we could redact is their address. But everything else on that criminal record check would be
So
open to the public.
So for example, then right now,
Nomination papers, you can actually request to look at those as well.
they can be, okay.
Yes, yeah.
So right now, so if someone were to call your office and say they wanted to look at a copy of my latest criminal record check, you would have to show that to them.
That's correct.
Okay, which I would be totally comfortable with. So yeah, so if it is public record anyway, like they're making the decision to run, and that would be part of it. So they would know that. I feel like they would know that. Again, as Deputy Mayor Sands was saying, I too, when I first ran, was quite surprised that this wasn't a requirement. It seems like it's right there. It just seems like it would be. And yeah, perhaps it's one of the things that gets mentioned in the nomination package that it could take up to 3 to 4 months. And if you're planning on running, get on it. But now that nominations can start as of January 1st, they have plenty of time to do so.
Councillor Schwab?
Just on to this criminal record check again. I do remember when my middle child was in school and her friend's mom could not attend field trips because she had shoplifted a scarf when she was under the age of 18.
Yeah.
And she's like, the only way I'd be able to go on a field trip for school is to get a pardon. So, I mean, it breaks my heart when parents can't go with their kids. But the same thing is if you want to be a public figure, you need to have a criminal record check. If you want to be that public figure, you need a pardon. Because what's going to happen if they get elected and now they never filled out a criminal record check, and now you're volunteering in the community and you have to provide a criminal record check to the staff? How do we deal with that? Exactly.
Councillor Dennis?
And I think you have the time before an election if there's a chance that you have to get fingerprinted. But if you make it as a requirement after you get elected, and so you have someone come in and they were elected and say, now we need a criminal record check, that could be 4 months down the road. So is that person active being in the election or not? Like, and you find out they have a criminal record check, well, let's have a by-election, right? So I think if you're gonna do the criminal record check, do it with the nominations so people have time. They can get it in there and have it done, in my opinion, rather than waiting until after.
Councillor Coulter?
I'm fully in agreement of having a criminal record check done. I'm just wondering, within this sort of administration recommendation, with not having the vulnerable checks and stuff done as well, or information on that, because that would all be part of this section, right?
No, I think the criminal record check is completely separate from the vulnerable sector, and I might I have to ask. Ken?
It's a more formal process. There's a few more queries that they have to run. And yeah, it's just to deal with people that are going to have more exposure to to vulnerable people, where the criminal record check is just a basic check of your name and date of birth. Often vulnerable sector check may end up requiring fingerprints. Stuff like that, yeah. And absolutely, if there's a name similar.
Yeah.
Also,
Sorry, could I also, from my understanding, and might have been, sometimes it depends on the reason why you're requesting a vulnerable sector, because I remember I was supposed to get one and the police said, no, you don't need it. Like you have to provide a rationale for why you need it. We're just not going to do it. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Yeah. They may say that you don't meet the requirements.
Yeah, and I think that's, but yeah, certainly if council, we could include in the nomination package that if you are elected and you're volunteering, that we would be looking for that. But yeah, if council wishes, we would just like direction, and we can bring back a bylaw to the next meeting if that's.
well, and with that, the child intervention check as well. I think that's a very important one that we need to, with the amount of interaction council does with youth, that's something that I think we should have somewhere that we can get some kind of a check in regards to that.
Yeah, we can look at maybe drafting a policy.
So I'm seeing, seems like the majority are leaning towards that. So I mean, I guess I'll keep it open for comments or someone to make a motion. Councillor Pell.
Perfect. I was going to say I'm prepared to make a motion. I move that council provide direction to administration to draft a bylaw to require criminal record checks to be included with a candidate's nomination package for general municipal elections, as well as the other items discussed in the nomination package.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? I think I just have one question before that. So as was mentioned, our administration, we're still analyzing the bill. Do we believe that this is final, that there won't be any changes or clarifications? We're just not entirely sure about the ramifications and the implications of everything.
No, I think the bill has been proclaimed. I think there may be some regulations that will be coming out that we're still waiting on, but it's still pretty slow going. I think the next, what we'll see next, this was kind of the one thing that we kind of had to have in place by the end of the year, that we really kind of wanted to. We will need to make some changes to our election bylaw, but we can bring forward the election bylaw in the new year, because we have to remove everything that speaks to the voting tabulators and that. So there's additional work that we need to do. So we'll bring forward a criminal record check bylaw to you. And then the next thing will be we'll need to get a resolution of council for the appointment of the returning officer.
And then again, you mentioned about you believe that this was contradicting the FOIP Act. So are we able to leave out any language to do with redaction, so that if it changes, if there's clarification, that we're not vulnerable some way?
We wouldn't include that within the bylaw. I don't believe we would. Yeah.
Thank you.
Make sure we do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So everybody understands the motion. I call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 6.7, request for decision on Womack's Road and Broadway Avenue intersection improvements.
Yeah, thank you, Worship Council. So Womack's Road and Broadway Avenue intersection improvements, we brought this matter forward to the November 18th Standing Committee of Council to seek direction regarding options for intersection improvements at the Womack's Road and Broadway Avenue intersection. So what we looked at was a number of revisions to the intersection, focusing on providing traffic modeling and conceptual design for a roundabout at that location. Other options include a signalized intersection and also potential bulbing at the intersection. So the 2015 Transportation Master Plan recommends signalization of the Womack's Road and Broadway Avenue intersection by about the 12,000 population horizon. So what we've done is we've reviewed and looked at both the signalized intersection as well as potentially installing the bulbing option. Some discussion was talked about at the last meeting about installation of a four-way stop sign at the intersection. It was not considered. This is because while it would partially address the sightline concerns, a four-way stop would not address the growing delays. So when you have the train moving in there, or when there's an event at the Eagle Builder Center, so we want to get the traffic moving in and out of there as quickly as possible. And with the roundabout, it provides that improvement immediately, as well as it continues to maintain a level of service well into the next 10 to 15 years. So we reviewed those options. Option one, again, was to look at the roundabout with a westbound right-hand turning lane. So that's where the majority of traffic goes from westbound on Womack's to go north on Broadway Avenue. Option two was signalization. Option three was northwest corner bulbing, so basically pushing that stop sign going south further into the intersection. And then option four in the report was status quo, so do nothing. So we went through this. We did talk about the fact that if this roundabout was to be approved, it would be the Blackfalds first roundabout. I know a lot of drivers are familiar with operation of the roundabouts, but again, some additional education couldn't hurt. As well as this roundabout would have a mountable curb in two directions at a minimum, potentially four, so that the large trucks can go through that intersection. The financial options, the roundabout option with the right-bound right turn lane would be about 1.4. The option two for signalization would be up to $750,000. Option three, the northwest bulb, would be about $66,000. And option four would have no financial implications required. Also, we had looked at wanting to bring this forward to the 2024 budget because of the fact that in order to get through the design, if council so wishes to move this forward in 2025 construction season, there will be a lot of reviews to do, as well as utility coordination and detour planning. So with that, there is administrative recommendations that kind of mirror the standing committee recommendations that were approved. But with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Councillor Schwab.
Through the chair to Director Warren, with the 2025 traffic master plan being done next year, would we see more information about what type of roundabout we need at the corner of Womack's and Broadway? Like, should we have a more detailed design of it, or should we just go with what administration is presenting at this time?
So as part of this review, we did look at refining the 2015 Transportation Master Plan turning movements. And we looked at rectifying them a bit based upon different growth scenarios. So we did review that. Basically, the result of building a compact versus fully transversable roundabout wouldn't really be a matter of whether we get new transportation numbers for the 2025 Transportation Master Plan. It would be more about whether or not we wanted to include that larger diameter roundabout, so that would make it unmountable, but that would require a lot of land acquisition. So really the short answer is we have the right numbers now that we revised from the 2015 Transportation Master Plan. In fact, we utilize numbers for the new school as well that's going up in the northwest end. So really, it's not going to be a matter of whether we're going to get better data. It's going to be a matter of whether we want that to be larger and mountable. But yeah, really expropriating the land to build a larger roundabout will basically result in the same level of operation. So it'll still function the way it will for the next number of years and be safe. It's just we wouldn't have to worry about so the queuing would be the same and everything. The difference would be that those bigger, larger trucks that are coming through there as a WB21 or whatnot truck wouldn't have to mount those curbs. So,
And then I've had a few messages by email and Facebook Messenger regarding if we are going to go through with doing the roundabout, if we could put in temporary four-way stop this winter. I know that when we built the Eagle Builder Center, I believe we had a temporary four-way stop there as well, just so that the traffic can flow a little bit more better, I guess. I don't know what word I'm looking for. Because it does bung up when school is starting and when people are trying to get their kids from school, and like that line's long. And I think Councillor Coulter had commented one time about this week, maybe she'll share it, how bad it was with the train and stuff. So I don't know. I think the four-way stop might help until we get the traffic circle in, but that's just my thoughts.
yeah, and I can comment on that a bit, Councillor Swab, through the chair. So the four-way stop wouldn't allow that east-west turning or the east-west direction to flow freely. So you would have those additional stops and starts at that intersection when there is a railway activity happening there. So it could increase the likelihood of that westbound traffic backing up beyond the railway crossing. But if we did do something, it would be temporary, as either the roundabout or the traffic signals would be needed in the very near future. So I really don't want to change traffic movements, but we could definitely look at it if it was something that council so wishes. I know that with that bump out where we extended it further to the south, that helped a bit, but I know that that intersection is very, very difficult to maneuver, especially when you're coming southbound.
Councillor Coulter.
Through the chair to Director Warren, just to comment on Councillor Swab's. There's been a couple of times, but since we started talking about the roundabout, I've really been paying attention to traffic flow on Womax. I live on Womax, and when you come to that intersection, even on normal times going through, it's difficult east or north-south to get out onto Womax. But I came up there twice this past week, and the train had just left and the traffic started coming, and there was 30 or 40 cars. So it's near impossible for anybody to get out there. That's where I was feeling a stop sign, four-way stop would work better. But I do know the four-way stops don't stop people from not stopping. But like I'm thinking this year we need to get something up there to help with the traffic because it's getting very dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. And I can comment on that too. The four-way stop. So in that case, you know, you're waiting 30 or 40 cars to clear that intersection, right? Now double that or triple it, because every single one of those cars now has to stop at that four-way stop. And then there's potential for vehicles past the railway to have to stop. And then before you know it, people are trying to get across the tracks while the other people are stopped on the other side. So it kind of moves the problem from one space to another. I'm not saying that it might not be beneficial to try, but I'm saying it's going to create other safety issues in other areas of that whole intersection.
Well, and I still have a little bit of concern when we were talking about the size of the roundabout. I know even with ours down here at 597 and Highway 2A, 4:30 to 5:30, the traffic coming from Red Deer towards Blackfalds is huge. But like, even with the, people don't stop at it properly. People don't pay attention to it. And I know it's an educational thing, but that's with the roundabout down there. There is a fair amount of traffic that's on the Woolmax Broadway crossover the tracks up to Highway 2A. There's a lot of traffic. You know, I'm just scared that it's a smaller roundabout's going to cause more accidents. Like, we've had so many new residents since 2015.
Oh, yeah.
Down in that area. We got the new schools down there. So that intersection is getting just as busy as what 597 and Highway 2A is.
Yeah, for sure, Councillor Coulter, and through the chair, regardless of the size of the roundabout, that's not going to make it any more safe or efficient. All it's going to do is allow a little bit more space for those trucks to make those turning movements. And so I guess the size in my mind isn't really the concern. It's more the flow through there. And with a dedicated right-hand westbound turning movement, a lot of people aren't going to make it to the intersection. They're actually going to almost do a right-hand turning movement around the intersection before they get into that critical turning and action location, right? So the majority of our traffic that's coming off of there is coming westbound or eastbound down Broadway or down Womax and turning north down Broadway, or coming from Broadway the other way. So the amount of traffic is on Broadway versus the east-west, whereas like Highway 2A, it would probably be closer to equal. So going north-south and east-west, it would be very close to equal. But again, we can look at that in a little bit more detail, but that's the information that we currently have.
Councillor Dennis.
One thing that I really liked with the government when they put in that traffic circle at 597, they went to Hex Trucking, which is now Trison, and got their big rig truck and made them circle in their parking lot before they designed this so that it always fit all the vehicles in there. And I captured it on my bus camera. I wish I would have got it saved. There was 2 semis going around that loop one night that fit both lanes, which is phenomenal. Not that I'd say it's recommended, but I think we want to make sure, like motor coaches going through, motor coaches don't have the turn radius as a conventional bus, and they're a lot lower. So like in the winter, you'd want to make sure that center is always kept clean for tracking up.
Yeah, Councillor Dennis, we would definitely keep it clean.
Yeah.
And the motor coaches would have to jump over that little bump out, but anything like a normal school bus should be able to make those turns.
And also when there's comments about the train, Alberta Transportation just put a roundabout in Penhold, and that is very close to the train. And the one at Springbrook is not far away either. Like, they are doable. Just for planning.
Yeah, and Councillor Dennis, I actually remember that when they did that in the yard, and it was really interesting to see. Yeah, and they actually have to have larger than WB 21 vehicles be able to make that turn because of the high load and the wide corridor there. But yeah, they really actually, you know, it was really beneficial to do that because you do have that mountable area, right? So I think roundabout design has come a lot longer from that. So I think they've got a lot better idea on how the auto turns move in there. But this is definitely something that we'd be looking at. Deputy Mayor Sands.
Thank you. So this is, this has been very contentious. This and the Eagle Builder Center parking. And I think over the course of the next couple of years, it's going to be very, very expensive. Looking at these things, my concern, and what I would like to see is what Councillor Svaal brought up about the 2025 plan that we could look at, as well as the stop signs right now. I know we haven't gotten to the Eagle Builder Center parking problems yet that we will have to deal with. And seeing as how 1.4 for the roundabout right now, it doesn't sit very well with me myself. I know other councillors have their views on it. And I just take that for myself to vote in favor of that right now. Not to say that we wouldn't next year, but the thing is at this time right now, I wouldn't consider myself fiscally responsible if I was to go with that. But I would like to see the master plan in 2025. I'd like to also look at the Eagle Builder Center parking as well. And I know we talked during the open house about potentially having some bylaw and that type of thing, helping out with game time for a half hour, 45 minutes, hour, which could be very beneficial. I know it's cutting into their very important time. But yeah, I would like to see the four-way looked into more. I can't myself vote in favor of option 1 tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just maybe comment on the transportation master plan just so that everybody kind of has an idea of what that does. So transportation master plan, every 10 years we look at it. The intersection that we're talking about needs some sort of an improvement at the 12,000 population, an intersection or a roundabout or some other sort of feature to make it work the way it needs to work. So that's kind of a population sort of thing. So the scope includes, we complete traffic counts for obviously the intersections that are most important, which we've already done for this intersection again. We look at accesses on Highway 2A with Alberta Transportation and negotiate with that. So at the time we looked at, okay, well, should we put in signalized intersections on Highway 2A or roundabouts or a combination of the two? We project future traffic at those population horizons. So the 12,000, the 16,000, the 22,000. Those are based off of the projections that we do. And then we do a completed implementation plan. So basically we say, okay, well, what makes more sense? Doing this improvement or waiting for another horizon to do this improvement plus another improvement. So try to get some efficiencies out of it. And then we also, of course, present the plan to local residents and stakeholders to get their feedback on these sorts of things. So moving forward, the 12,000 and 16,000 population horizon for the 2025 transportation master plan probably won't change much. Like there'll be some revisions in it. But as far as this intersection itself, the way we move forward with it is to do some design and functionality design on that intersection. So just wanted to clarify that for transportation, the transportation master plan scope, so that everybody understands it's not a functional planning exercise or a detailed design exercise of any of the intersections, just really a high level saying how much money over the next horizon are we going to have to put in A, B, C, and D, F, G intersections, signalizations, road widenings, and things like that.
Thank you, Director Warren. I was just wondering, like I drive down there every morning, and once in a while I get stopped on Womax heading east, waiting for a train, but I get stopped further west, so I get a good view of that. So I'm wondering, what I'm thinking about the roundabout, and I'm thinking, is there actually enough room for this thing? Now I'm not the professional or anything like that, but I'm trying to think. I'm thinking, okay, I got my truck. Is there enough room? I mean, looking at this traffic master plan next year, and as our population grows, are we going to need to expropriate? Are we going to need to move some land around? And then our 1.4 is not 1.4 anymore. It's considerably more. And so that was a concern that I had as well.
Yeah, fair enough,
so-
Councillor Sands. That's
Yeah.
that's a really, so we did do the geometric review of the roundabout, and it will fit within an existing carriageway. That being said, the only way it is going to fit is it will be skewed like a lot of the roundabouts are, so it skews to the south a bit. And because of the extra lands that we have from that old duplex that was removed there, and the space that we have there, it will fit within there. But really, until we see exactly what the implications of the utility reviews and the modifications of that will really kind of set whether the 1.4 is under or whether it's over. We've also accounted for some detours in there. So there is the possibility, if we do move forward with detailed design and potentially construction either this year or next year, there is a possibility to save a considerable amount of money if we can close that entire intersection and do a detour only going east-west. So that is another sort of piece of the puzzle that has to be talked about. So if we could potentially close the intersection for 2 months and just basically have the westbound Womax going east-west through the existing parking lot, and not have access to Broadway at that location, we could definitely save significant amount of money. But that's again going to be something that we need to kind of work through the detail design and with engagement with council to see if that would be appropriate. And then there's the other thing too, where South Street is now open, so that's changed a lot of traffic patterns as well. I don't know if that helps or makes it worse.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's an answer for it all, but it's just a matter of, is it going to work? Financially, is it going to work in the best interest for us? Thank you, Director Warren.
Thank you.
I do have questions, but I'll Councillor Pell.
Thank you. Through the chair to the director. And I know we did have a lot of discussions about this project and the possibility of moving it forward at our budget workshop. So I guess I have one question would be, so with the 2025 transportation master plan, if it gets approved in the budget that we're going to discuss later tonight, how long would you estimate it would be until we actually received that plan back? I'm guessing it's quite a lengthy process to complete the traffic counts.
Yeah, so basically what we would do is we would do traffic counts while school is in. So they have to happen basically before summer months. And then we would analyze that data, and then there would be a number of revisions and reiterations. There's also a large part, I believe, that we'll be talking about with Alberta, like the 2A corridor, and some reviews on how we can make that a little bit more accessible. And then as well, multimodal transportation is also going to be part of it. So how can we integrate the pedestrian movements with it? So I would anticipate close to the end of next year before we'd actually have a result. And like I said earlier, that won't give you any sort of additional details with this intersection that we're talking about.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah, while I wasn't here when we did the one in 2015, but I would assume based on other consulting and master plans that we've worked on in the years that I have been here, it's quite a lengthy process. My other question, so I did, just regarding traffic counts and stuff, I did look up and see, so I found some information on the Red Deer County website regarding gasoline alleys. So they state that there's 20,000 people a day moving through gasoline alley. And I do tend to spend quite a bit of time down there. And I've been on the smaller roundabouts that they have on the roads. And I've really never seen any issues with anyone driving completely over them. Certainly not as much as I've seen videos on the internet of people coasting through, 3 or 4 lane, like proper traffic circles, the big ones. So I don't really see that being a problem. It's more like the speeding. If you have people that are bound and determined to go 2.5 times the speed limit, then they're going to be bound and determined to do whatever they'd like. I did notice as well, so on our budget that's coming forward later in this meeting on page 213, we have $1.2 million was what we discussed for this project, but on here it does say 1.4. So I was just looking for clarification on that.
Yeah, so the 1.4 versus 1.2 is a lot of what I was talking to Councillor Sands about. So the construction detour, if we need to keep that Broadway Avenue northbound lane open.
Gotcha.
It is a trucking route, but we could potentially amend it so that it goes around town, similar to what we did when we were building the route or building the revised intersection geometrics around the Eagle Builder Center.
Okay.
So that's a large part of it. And then the other part of it was just a little bit more contingency in regards to the utilities coordination in there.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
So I think Councillor Narpel and my brains were in similar places. Her last 2 questions were my first 2 questions on the list, which is fine. But so in terms of the traffic master plan, I was, again, looking at what timeline was that. But I guess further to that is, could that master plan include more detailed analysis of this intersection or any other key intersections that we feel are going to likely need significant upgrades over the next few years as we meet different population horizons?
Your worship, short answer is no, you shouldn't include it. Obviously, you could include it as a separate scope or, an analysis on that. But we did spend about $20,000 this year reviewing that as part of the 2024 budget. So that's when we looked at the actual traffic counts, what the traffic counts were in the transportation master plan, and almost did a little bit of a functional analysis on that intersection. So the way to do it would be to do preliminary design on that intersection, and then you'd get some really fixed geometric numbers, and you'd get the cost estimate even more refined. But until we actually go out there and do survey and get that information and figure out exactly where all the costs are going to be held, I don't think I'd recommend putting that into a transportation master plan. Master plan is almost your highest level document, right? It shows which roads need to be improved and how they're going to be improved. You'd actually use functional design or preliminary design to do that exercise, which is obviously where we would go if we were moving forward with this. We'd do the design. It would be detailed design, but we'd start off with that functional / preliminary design and then move forward into detailed design until you get to that full drawing package, and then that's when you'd issue it out for tender.
So that said, if council was interested in getting more comprehensive functional design on that, would that increase the overall cost of this, or could that, add a piece towards the potential if then we decide that we would want to move forward with traffic circle, or potentially if we found in that process that there was better alternatives or changes? Is this, I guess the basic question is it possible to do more functional study or more detailed functional study without a massive increase in cost?
Yeah, Mayor Hoover, the function of the detailed design would cross all those other bridges, the preliminary design, the functional design, the preliminary design, and then the detailed design. It's just would be how far along do we want to go with that functional design / detail design before we make that decision.
Okay.
So yeah, we could definitely do that. The trick would be is if we want to build this year, which I think that was the direction of council, but obviously things change. It's a very tight timeline to get everything all designed and built, or designed and ready to be built for tendering, say in March of this year.
Okay, so we'll put a pin in that because that's just the kind of the discussion that I'm aiming toward. And again, Gasoline Alley was on my mind because if I understand this right, that's kind of the two, not the major north traffic circle at Gasoline Alley, but we're talking the ones that run east-west. There's two smaller ones. I think those were the ones that were the model or somewhat the example for this. And if I understand, Stantec was involved in that. So do we have access to traffic counts for those particular traffic circles just to get a sense? Because I know I've gone through them and they seem fairly efficient, but I think Gasoline Alley's lessons learned or information from that would go a long way for us.
Your worship, we could definitely get those traffic movements. I guess just so everybody's aware, the traffic information and the movements that were done as part of this whole package, like including the memo and the business plan, that was basically already done. And it would just be a matter of comparing, well, what is our horizon maximum traffic flows and what theirs is. But really the roundabout can function a lot better when it comes to vehicles moving in and out of the intersection just in generally compared to a signalized intersection. So we could dig into that and give you some more information if you wanted to compare the two. But I think that you'll find that the Womack's intersection in general, other than the northbound turning movement, would be quite a bit lower traffic counts than say the intersection at Red Deer County.
And I suspected that because like you said, 20,000 plus vehicles through there. I mean, I would assume that's much higher. And I noted in our this traffic patterns here that in reality the traffic seems to be quite a bit heavier coming from the west east on Womack than it is the other way around. So I'm a little bit less concerned about the crossing, I guess. That not to say that isn't an issue. I don't have to go through that intersection like some of the other council members, so I don't see it. But and then I guess finally, this is more a comment than anything. I mean, I similar to Deputy Mayor Sands, I'm struggling with the price tag of this. I'm trying to understand how it, I know things add up, but I know we've done this before where we said, look, we're not willing to, and it hasn't gone for RFP, and that's where we before said no, we're not happy with those bids that have come in, and we want to wait and see if something better comes in. I know we're not there yet. I'm having a hard time with the number. It seems pretty big. I know that safety at that intersection for me is paramount and the priority in addressing it. And so with that, I'm also interested potentially in just four-way stop to see what happens, in the interim. I think that although I want to see a permanent solution, not a Band-Aid solution, that was one that doesn't commit a whole lot, but that's my thoughts on this. Let's see who comes. I think Councilor Dennis.
Also, this is kind of related, but not. Looking at the whole picture, is there complaints on this side? Because I know I do not like coming out on Greg Street and turning left there because you cannot see. I feel absolutely terrible. And if I was driving a big vehicle, you wouldn't catch me on that road because I quite often avoid it with my van.
Yeah, Councillor Dennis, to answer your question, there hasn't been any formal complaints, but I know that it is difficult turning westbound on there at AM, PM peaks. And it is a lot closer to the rail line than I think it was ever planned to be.
Yeah, but like looking at the whole picture, I think if we look at the whole picture and help it, because if that flow is going to be a lot better with a circle there, like getting out at this or even this corner here, isn't that great to turn left? Like if I go to the store, quite often I'll go 2-way, and depending on the time, I might go across Park Street go across, come out with the four-way stop at A&W to come back to my house, or do the circle and go back around. Because this is not in my books as a pretty intersection, that's for sure.
That's a fair
Thank you.
point. I didn't actually consider how that, if it's backed up going west, how much challenge that would be turning on there. Councillor Pill.
Thank you. Just, Mayor Hoover, one point of clarification. The Red Deer County, it was 20,000 visitors a day, not vehicles.
Vehicles,
That's
okay.
right, just for clarification. And then also, so I will say, as someone that remembers the stoplights at Highway 2A and 597 and how long it took to come home from Red Deer when I used to work in Red Deer every day, versus even if I have to wait for like 3 or 4 vehicles in front of me to get around the roundabout, it's never once taken me 37 minutes to drive home from the north end of Red Deer like it used to daily with stoplights. So when we talk about stoplights or stop signs, and even a 4-way stop, because it takes so much more time. If no one else is around, you still have to stop. Granted, some people don't, but that is the rule. It's just the roundabout moves traffic. Everything can flow. And it's, in my opinion, the best way to remove any bottlenecks.
Coach Dennis, your lights on, so
Sorry.
I will agree in that respect. I think I've been very happy with 597 and 2A. That's such a game changer for this community. And I'm confident that even a small traffic circle would greatly improve traffic flow through there. But I'm again, struggling with that price tag. And so, going back to what I put the pin in, my comment would be, I would support putting some money towards a detailed analysis that provides us, perhaps, as you say, up to the point where maybe there's some design. I'm just wondering how that would look. And again, I'd love to hear from Red Deer County their analysis, or how many vehicles are going through there. That would go a long way to telling me how far along in our population growth this, if we move forward with the traffic circle, this would be, highly functional for us. So, Deputy Mayor Sands.
Thank you. I just, I think, that, like Mayor Hoover said, the price of this scares me right now. But also, like he said, if we could look into more detailed traffic master plan, we are, we're going to hit 12,000 people. We're going to expand. The area is going to expand. The traffic is going to be a lot more. And when I'm parked there in the morning and I'm watching, I think, I don't know how that's going to work. I really don't. For that area, for that small of an area, if we had more land there, that we could put a bigger one in, maybe. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm not a professional. You guys know. But the thing is when I look at, as our population grows, and that area becomes busier, and also, like I said, it's a struggle because we still haven't come to terms with Eagle Builder Center parking, and that's one very important thing that we also need to remember when we're playing with these dollar bills. So, thank you.
Councillor Schwab.
Through the chair to Director Warren, I do appreciate the time that you guys have spent on looking into this roundabout. I know that we pulled it from the 2026 budget to move it to 2025. And I don't feel that I'm ready yet to see this roundabout there. I think we do have to do due diligence to make sure that we're building the right type of roundabout in that area. And I know that we will come up with really good plans for it. And I know you guys have done a wonderful job. So I thank you for that. So I know 1.4 million probably in 2025 might go up in 2026. But I think we need to make sure we're very well educated on how we're going to do this. And as for Councillor Dennis's comment on Greg Way, I know from previous plans for the Eagle Builders Center and doing a 4-lane, Greg Street was supposed to be blocked off. I'm just saying we could block it off and there would be our parking lot for the Eagle Builders Center. That's it.
Councillor Coulter.
Thank you. I agree with the price tag. One thing that's getting me in regards to the price tag for this roundabout is you present us with 1.4 and like Councillor Appel mentioned, that's coming up in our capital budget here in a little while, and it's 1.2. I'm having a hard time getting presented with one price, and we have it going into budget with a different price. And trying to
Councillor
find,
Coulter, it should be 1.4 for either one. It should both be 1.4. The difference is mostly the detour that would have to happen. So that's the majority of that extra $200,000. Not all of it, but the majority of it.
but I would like to see that we're actually getting, and I would rather see something priced at over budget than under budget and having to come back and ask for more money to cover unexpected expenses. And I know I brought it up before, but it's something that we seriously, as a council, need to watch. And as administration presenting to us, be diligent about trying to stay within the budget that's been approved, right? And in regards to the parking lot, we haven't made a decision on the parking lot yet for the Eagle Builders Center. I agree on, we need to sort of figure out what's happening there, because throwing this roundabout in there might not have the same traffic flow depending on where the parking lot goes. Thank you.
Director Dubresser.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify the price tag there, on the second motion that's in front of you here is requesting $200,000 for 2024. The total, and then 1.2 in 2025. So the total project is 1.4, but just split over 2 budget years.
Thank you. Councillor Pell.
Oh, thanks. I realize that I'm outnumbered, but I will just also mention, so the cities of Calgary and Edmonton have a lot of these small roundabouts in residential neighborhoods. And again, I've never seen issues in them. Obviously, that might be different when we're looking at events, large events leaving the parking lot there at Eagle Builders Center. But, you know, this isn't we're not looking at creating a new wheel. Here, we're just looking at utilizing something that is used in a lot of places, never mind our country that's 60 years behind the rest of the world in traffic. Anyhow, just wanted to mention it. I know they can fit in small spaces.
Deputy Mayor Sands.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Appel. Yeah, I agree with you regarding those roundabouts and that type of thing in Calgary and Edmonton. But my concern is I don't know what their traffic plans look like. I don't know what they're paying for these things, and that's what concerns me is the cost when we have a number of things coming up that is going to cost us as well, and though that's kind of what is making me lean towards a 4-way stop just as a Band-Aid solution. This needs to be taken care of course. But as far as 1.4, no, I can't myself, but thanks.
Councillor Pell.
Sorry, just for, through the chair to Director Warren, who might be able to answer this question, but I recall a couple of years ago when we were at a conference and they were talking about the cost of paving, and just a two-lane regular road per kilometer was about $1 million. And that was a couple of years ago. Is that, like, if we were
1
to
million to 6 million, depending on how dense
if
it is.
we were
yeah.
to compare, you know, the amount that we paid for paving on, let's say, Leong Road or South Shore, like one of these streets that we're just paving now, I don't know that 1.4 is really is ridiculously inflated from the cost of that we're paying for paving in other areas.
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor Lapel. It does cost a lot of money to put pavement and curb and gutter and regrading things and the like. Yeah, the roundabout is the long-term solution for this. The sooner we build it, the better the traffic's going to flow in and out of there. We could do a signalized intersection and save a little bit of money, but you're going to have that failure happen earlier, so you're not going to get as much life out of the roundabout. So again, it would be great if we didn't have to build this in 2025, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of things that have to happen here. But from the community's point of view, we need to do something at that intersection, and I strongly urge you not to just put a four-way stop up there. That's going to cause problems upstream and downstream. I know there's already problems there with sight lines. That's definitely something that we need to look at. But how do we get from where we are today with this tie-in to having something that's going to move traffic efficiently? And the best way forward is doing the roundabout. And there's also that other designated lane there. If you're really concerned with the cost, you could remove that eastbound turning movement lane, and then you could build it in the future. So that is another option.
Well, since you mentioned the lane, that was actually a question I didn't ask. What would be the cost just to add, you know, a westbound lane, an additional lane there, even if it was a four-way stop, to give an option for clearing traffic that way? I think it's kind of broken down each corner, right?
You can't really do that, Your Worship, because in order to put the roundabout in place, you've got to take the whole intersection and shift it southeast. So you can't shift the intersection and leave it as a four-way stop and then put a dedicated right-hand turning movement. There's not enough room in there. So either all the roundabout characteristics need to be put in as a single lane roundabout, or do a dedicated right as well too. So this included the dedicated right, or the westbound to the northbound, so that people could still be doing the other three movements while the dedicated northbound lane is in place.
So if council were to approve any funding, even to move forward with detailed planning, would this go out for RFP, or would this, you know, who would be doing the planning? I know some of this includes, you know, utilities, et cetera, but just.
So it depends on when you want it built. If you want to build it this year, we need to move forward with it right away. Stantec is our general engineering company. That being said, if you wanted to do it the following year, we could look at going out for RFP. That'll cause an additional amount of time. If council so wishes, we could do that. The design needed to do a roundabout, whoever the consultant is, it's going to be very similar. The biggest cost savings is going to be when we tender it, if we do a full closure, that's going to save a significant amount of money, and what time of the year we actually tender it out. So if we tender it later in the year, obviously contractors aren't going to want to bid on it because it's later in the year. We basically have to tender it out before March. You could do April at the latest, so that you can get it into the 2025 work plan. So again, I don't know if I quite answered that, but hopefully I gave you some information.
Right. Well, I mean, I do believe that this is a high priority. I think we do need to do something to make that intersection at the very least safer, if not, you know, ultimately the long run is to make it efficient, but safe is the number one priority for sure. in my mind. Sorry. Yeah, Isaac.
Council, I just wanted to help you guys a bit here and maybe kind of move the process along a bit. So if I'm hearing correctly, I'm getting the sense that council would like to perhaps postpone this decision to, or to at very least maybe remove this from the capital budget for this year. Is that, I'm just, if that's the case, I'm just kind of trying to work on, instead of defeating these two motions, we could give you an alternative, but I'm just wanting to get some clarification if that's the direction we're headed in.
Deputy Mayor Sands.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, CEO Isaac, I would be in favor of that, removing it from the capital this year.
Councillor Appel.
Thank you. I will say, and I realize Deputy Mayor Sands wasn't able to be at our budget discussions, but I'm honest, like I'm a little surprised at the direction this is going this evening based on those discussions that that we had at that time, which this isn't the only council item that we're talking about tonight that seems to have changed a lot in 3 weeks. So I don't know. I'm confused, but I'm ready for someone to make a motion.
Your worship.
Director Warren.
I'll just kind of maybe add to this a little bit. We could look at some, synchro modeling around the roundabout itself. And, like we could look at, looking at some functional designs and just kind of maybe not totally removing this, but at least trying to, take it back to administration and try to get a little bit more details around what Councillor Sands and maybe some of the other councillors were saying about, turning movements and the abilities to work with it. We could do a synchro model to look at the four-way stops and how it would perform in the interim and things like that. That would be another suggestion that we could do.
Thank you. Yeah, from my perspective, I don't want this to stop. I think we need to move forward with these improvements. I think, and my personal opinion, I think this traffic circle will work well. That's my belief, but I'm not a traffic engineer, and I think data goes a long ways. And looking at this, I do get that sense. The one little thing would be getting some information back from Red Deer County on that. But I would fully support approving some dollars to start moving this forward, at least so that we're not pushing this way down the road, because I think there needs to be some improvement. So how are you suggesting this is coming back to another council meeting to talk about what can be done, or how?
So what I would recommend is, because we do have the capital plan, that's we're looking to get it approved tonight. We take that out, but council can amend the capital budget at any time. We'll come back in the new year with some more information on how to kind of maybe do some of this modeling that Director Warren is kind of alluded to, and then we can go from there, and then we can do some of that modeling, and then if we need to amend that capital budget, we can. But just noting that by amending it maybe at a later time, it is very unlikely that it will be able to be built within the 25 year. So it would then, we're delaying this into 2026, certainly by this.
Well, I did agree that this is something, because we're not ultimately making a motion to approve a $1.4 million expenditure at this point. We're being asked to approve $200,000 to get the process started. And I know that the capital budget would include the full amount, but I know that we can amend that at any point. So again, I'm happy to put money into this to get this process moving.
Okay. Yes, and then, Director Warren was just making note that we will need some money in the budget, in the capital budget, to do some kind of modeling. Do you have an estimate of what that might be?
I mean, I'm thinking an upset amount. I'm not opposed to $200,000 as an upset limit to knowing that we're not necessarily going to that point. That's my opinion, because I think we need to move this forward for safety, but I know that there's others, and we'll see. I mean, that's my thought.
So do we want to keep 200,000 in North?
I mean, I'm not making a motion at this point. I could if no one else is, but I mean, I'm not seeing responses, but there seems to be others that want to just put a stop on this entirely. Is that the case?
Did they do it?
Councillor Coulter.
Sorry, Mayor Hoover and Director Warren, I'm not looking at putting a stop to this. I agree that something needs to be done there, but I'm just very leery on the way certain things are showing up to be that have been presented on how it's going to work. And I would hate to put in 1.4 or 1.6 by chance if some things are needed to be added. And then in 2029, come back and say, you know what, with all the new development over there, we have to put another 1.4 in. I would just like to make sure that all our ducks and T's are crossed and lined up, that we aren't going to have to do that. Because there's basically two intersections, well, three if you come off of 597, going to that side or our side of that highway. And we've seen how everybody was upset over South Street being shut down. We every year turn around and having to shut down Womack or South Street. I just want a little more clarification and detailed on where we're going with it.
Councillor Schwab.
I agree with you, Mayor Hoover. I think we do need to put like the $200,000 towards some kind of modeling so that we can see where we need to be, because it is a safety issue and it's better to be able to kibosh whatever's going to happen, in the future by, being a little bit thorough in what we're doing. So I don't know how to put that into.
Well, I think essentially what we'd be looking at is passing these resolutions as they are, and then we're talking about the capital budget differently.
Yeah. Because now we're taking $200,000 instead of 1.4 million.
Because the
do
balance of
modeling.
this would be included in the capital budget. That's something, if we were to say that we're not comfortable committing the capital budget to this at this time, then it's something we'd have to amend in order to add it in if that functional study comes back. But that's.
I think the simplest right now would be to pass a resolution that council allocate 200,000, like instead of that they move forward with the design and construction. You would just say that council move forward with the allocation of 200,000 for looking at additional modeling for the Womack Broadway intersection.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Schwab. Councillor Schwab. Councillor Schwab.
You said 50?
Per year's per depth.
But should we put a little bit higher just?
Yeah.
So how refined do you want it to be?
Let's just do the 200 because. Yeah.
The mic is up, by the way.
So I'll make the motion that we put an additional $200,000 for modeling and in our 2025 budget. That work?
Well, you said additional, right?
Yeah, well, I put the additional in the wrong spot. $200,000 for additional modeling.
Yes.
In the 2025 budget.
2024.
2024?
Well, let's do
Well,
2024 and then we can
okay.
pull it out of the
There we go.
capital budget.
Yep,
That's probably the way.
2024. Then at least
Yes.
you can get on it sooner than later.
Yes,
What we,
thank you.
what we do know is all is in reserves at this point. Okay,
Yeah.
so everybody understands that. Any debate or discussion on that motion? Deputy Mayor Sands.
Thank you. I don't want to, now, I understand the safety and that type of thing regarding this intersection. I don't know if this additional investigations is going to tell us any more than what we might hear from a master plan, or looking at traffic flow, expropriation, making this area, the area is going to grow. That's what we know. We know that's going to happen. It's going to grow. So I'm not comfortable with the $200,000 at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other debate or discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that passes. And all opposed? Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what comes out of that, maybe some other recommendations. All right, moving on to 6.8, request for decision on 4409 South Street excavation project request and award.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Worship. 4409 South Street excavation project request and award. So we've been proceeding with trying to get 4409 South Street rezoned for residential construction to put some apartment buildings on there. Through that process, we've done a couple of environmental assessments, which has identified approximately 3,000 cubic meters of soil exceeding the regulatory limits for salt contamination due to the fact that we were dumping the town's snow on that site for about 10 to 12 years. So with that, we wanted to put out a tender to see if we couldn't remove that material, hopefully before the land sale agreement ends in March sometime. So with that, we looked at what the limits of that area would be, and it's essentially concentrated on the southeast corner of that site. So what we did is we put the tender complete to basically remove that material and dispose of that contaminated soil to a certified landfill, and also do the testing required to make sure that the contamination is substantially removed enough to meet the regulations of residential development. So we posted this tender on October 28th, and it closed on November 12th. We received 11 bids for the project, 2 of which did not complete the submission for the bids presented. So there is a table attached that outlines the total amount. So CBO Earthworks was the low bidder at $476,335.00, excluding GST, but including a 10% contingency. So the review letter is attached for you guys' review if you wanted to inspect it a little bit more. It is of note that CBO Earthworks has been, so basically DB Bobcat was bought by CBO, so it'll be essentially some of the same people that have been working locally with DB Bobcat that will be doing this removal there if council so wishes to proceed. So they've done work, successfully completed phase 1 of the East Area Stormwater Management Project, as well as phase 1 of the Young Road and Duncan Avenue project. And they more than likely would have bid on phase 2 if they weren't going through that turmoil with their company. So what we did do is we looked at consulting and contract administration for the award of this, as well as additional geotechnical inspection. And that table is outlined there. So we're looking at approximate cost of $550,000 to do this work. Now, it is of note that the tender contract included an additional 3,000 cubic meters of provisional material to be removed. This is due to the fact that when we estimated how much material was being removed, we only did that with test holes. So we dug down and estimated those removal amounts. The city of Red Deer just recently did one where it started off at 3,000 cubes and it ended up closer to 4,000 or 5,000 cubic meters. So we wanted to put a provisional item in this. So what we're asking for is that between the 10% contingency that would be built into the tender and the 10% contingency we're planning to put on here, that would essentially allow us to remove another $100,000 worth of material if we ran into that when they did the testing and they realized that they had to dig further into the bank. So with that, we're estimating the cost to be about $550,000. So that would include the excavation contract, inspection and testing, consulting, contract administration, as well as the dump fees for that Class 2 landfill. What we're asking tonight is that council consider the following motions: to move forward with that excavation for $550,000. The monies for that would be taken out of the land sale. And then also that council award 4409 South Street excavation work to CBO Earthworks. So if you guys did move forward with that tonight, they'd more than likely start before the Christmas season, and then they'd excavate that material through January and February.
Councillor Pell.
Thank you. So when we first discussed the rezoning of this parcel, like, we didn't really foresee that the costs would be this much for that. How much of that potentially 3,000 cubes would have to be moved anyway due to the project construction?
Maybe half.
Maybe half.
But the difference is it could be moved and placed on site somewhere, whereas this material has to be, it's basically contaminated, salty material that has to be taken to a Class 2 landfill. So we would also have to, as part of our land agreement, bring in approximately 3,000 cubes of material from another capital project to make the land deal good.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, this is not something we planned or expected, but that land is sitting vacant. And this, I know, big picture, will probably recover in just a couple of years of property taxes on that once development is complete. And it is essentially, a necessity to move that forward and to add the number of doors on that for our community's growth, I think is essential. It's not expected, but it is recoverable. It's one of those things in my mind that's recoverable. Deputy Mayor Sands.
Thank you. I think, it's unfortunate that that came in where it did. I think it's a good example of how the numbers can get away from us at times. But we know, like Mayor Hoover said, is a very important project, and it is recoverable for sure. So yes, I am in favor. Thank you.
Would you like to make the motion?
I would. I'm prepared to move that council move forward with the 4409 South Street excavation project and allocate $546,938 to this project as part of the 2024 capital budget.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? No, it's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Coulter?
I'm ready to move that council awards the 4409 South Street excavation work to CBO Earthworks for $497,216.36 excluding GST.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. I'm getting a funny echo. Well, it's just nobody else is on. That's why. Right. Moving on to item 6.9, request for decision for the 2025 capital budget and 5-year capital plan.
Thank you, Council. So before you, you do have the 2025 capital budget and the 5-year capital plan. The 2025 capital budget has been prepared for your review and approval. Over the past few months, the town has developed the 2025 capital budget and the 5-year capital plan. Hosted a budget workshop on November 1st and 2nd for in-depth discussion with council and administration. Capital adjustments were made based on those discussions and are reflected here. Just to note that decisions regarding individual projects will not influence any future tax rate increases. So the capital plan was set to be just over 5 million, but hearing the previous motion tonight, we will reduce that amount down to 3.922 million. So Appendix B has all the details of the capital projects. Some project changes, the water reservoir expansion, that was approved prior on November 12th, so that has been taken out. That will be a 2024 project now. And the whistle cessation, that capital project has been taken out. And once again, this capital project can be reintroduced at a later date if council chooses to do so. As mentioned, the funding sources there, we will take out the $1.2 million for the roundabout there, and there's 2 motions there for council that council will move to approve the 2025 capital budget as amended, and that council accepts the 5-year capital plan as information. And with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Seeing none. Do I have a mover? Councillor Coulter.
I move that council moves the council moves to approve the 2025 capital budget as amended.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sands.
I'm prepared to move that council accept the 5-year capital plan as information.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? Unanimous as well. Thank you. 6.10, request for decision 2025 operating budget and 3-year operating forecast.
Excellent. So yeah, we got the 2025 operating budget and the 3-year operating forecast. The budget process commenced with the special meeting of council August 6th to establish the general direction, set priorities and focused areas of council. The draft operating budget was brought forward and completed through a review at the budget workshop. Public sessions included participation from council, the CEO, department directors, finance and department managers, and these changes are identified and discussed in the appendix there. The draft budget has been updated just under $36 million for 2025. Yeah, like I said, Appendix A has the summary of changes from the budget workshop. It's also it's a requirement of the NGA that the town must forecast operations for the next 3 years, and that's attached in Appendix C. Residential utility rates are listed there for increases of 1 to 8%, depending on the budget line there. These rates are necessary to cover the increased cost of service water from the Water and Wastewater Services Commission and for the reserve transfers of future capital requirements. Yeah, so administration has prepared the budget accordingly to the discussions that had. The town of Blackfalds will see an increase in property taxes. On an average house of $350,000, it's about $11 a month increase. Expected new revenue from new supplemental as well as new growth is around $150,000, making $776,000 worth of new tax revenue for 2025. As this time of year, most municipalities are looking at bringing budget to council, and I have done a bit of a survey. These may not be approved by other councils, but I surveyed the surrounding communities as well as the ones in our comparable communities, just to kind of list some of the prospective tax increases. Town of Ponoka at 3.25, City of Lacombe 2.86 plus the 1% paving equals 3.86. Town of Edson 4%, Strathmore 4.5, Morinville 5.88. Wetaskiwin 5.99, Hinton 7.88, and the City of Red Deer at 10.5. We are sitting in the middle of our comparables that I've found to date. Once again, they're expected. They haven't been approved, so take that with a word of caution. And the administration recommendations tonight is that council move to approve the 2025 operating budget as presented. And then the second one is that council receive the 3-year operating forecast as information. And with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Councillor Pell.
Thank you. I'm prepared to move council approve the 2025 operating budget as presented.
Thank you. Debate or discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. And then Councillor Pell.
Thank you. I'll also move council receive the 3-year operating forecast as information.
Thank you. Debate, discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you. Moving on to 6.11, the Alberta Municipal Water and Wastewater Partnership Grant.
Thank you. The Alberta Municipal Water and Wastewater Partnership provides cost-shared funding to eligible municipalities to help municipal facilities for water supply and treatment and wastewater treatment disposal. The deadline for submissions for this grant is November 30th. At the November 12th regular meeting of council, approval was granted to amend the 2024 capital budget for the Broadway Avenue Water Reservoir Expansion Project. This project will upgrade the Broadway Reservoir, which currently supplies water to the residents of Blackfalds and Macomb County's Asplin Industrial Park. At this same meeting, council approved the submission of a grant application to the Local Growth and Sustainability Program to assist with the costs of this upgrade. Since that time, administration has been informed that the town could also submit an application to the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership Program. So as part of the requirements for the application, it would require a letter from each member municipality requesting funding. Macomb County will be bringing forward the request to council at their November 28th regular meeting of council. The financial implications are the approximate cost will be $6.8 million, depending on detailed design, review of existing facilities, assets, and scoping. The funds required for this project will be drawn out of reserves, with the county to pay their portion of 41% of the cost after the grant is applied. Details of this payment would be outlined in the funding agreement between the town and the county. So what we found out today that with the one that we've applied, or the first one that we're applying on, we can get up to 50%. With the second one, we could stack an additional 30%. So that's significant if we're successful. So I've made a slight amendment to this, the recommendation, and it's that council authorize administration to proceed with the Alberta Municipal Water and Wastewater Partnership Grant application for the Broadway Avenue Water Reservoir Expansion Project and provide a funding request for the project to include with the grant application. So that is the administrative recommendation.
Thank you. Questions, comments? My comment is I think that's fantastic that we have the option for stacking grants on this, which is something we weren't aware of before. And given that this is benefiting
Both parties.
both the county and the town of Blackfalds, I think that makes it even more likely that we'll be considered highly for this. Someone like to make that motion? Councillor Schwab?
I'll move that council authorize administration to proceed with the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership Grant application for the Broadway Avenue Water Reserve Expansion Project and provide a funding request for the project to include with the grant application.
I'm impressed you mentally kept that extra addition on there. Thank you so much. Debate or discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. So that we have no notices of motion. That we do have a confidential item. So I'm going to call a 5-minute recess at 9:15.